Welcome to Bracket U, a college basketball bracket podcast brought to you by Delphi Bracketology. This is our 11th episode of the season as we are in the middle of our 8th year of bracketology and want to bring weekly updates to those who want to know where their favorite team stands in regards to the NCAA tournament. This podcast is for all of you junkies who have March Madness all season long as we are getting closer to that moment each and every week. We're able to create this content thanks to the sponsorship of Coca-Cola Bottling of Kokomo and the generous donations of our followers. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for creating our intro music and to Jared Morris of the Assembly Call for inspiring us to branch out and do more of these types of podcasts. Joining me are two editors of Delphi Bracketology, Cade Nelson, our junior editor, and Luke Smock, our senior editor, on the show tonight. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about our top 4 seed lines, and then we're going to each take a couple of resumes, tell us what are concerning and what are strengths of those resumes, and then we finish with our game-winning question of the year. So please buckle in, listen up, and here we go. And Daniel, thanks for joining us live. We will answer your question here about St. Louis here towards the end of the show. We appreciate your participation. So on our 4 top seed lines, we have Gonzaga overall number 1, followed by Auburn, then Purdue, and probably a debatable last number 1 seed, but after our meeting today, we are okay with Kentucky being a number 1 seed. We think the next few teams on the 2 seed line are all capable of being up there, depending on results coming up. And our 2 seed line, Arizona, Kansas, Baylor, and Wisconsin. Wisconsin has a great resume. Their overall net is 19, which makes that somewhat questionable. And then Duke comes in as a 3 seed with Villanova, Texas Tech, and UCLA. And rounding out our 4 seeds this week will be Tennessee, Illinois, Houston, and Providence. So, gentlemen, 4 seed lines, some solid basketball teams. They're all going to make the tournament. Picking where they are on the seed line is always an interesting thing. But let's talk a little bit about the decisions we have to make and what we're looking at. Teams that could go either way. Let's start with Kentucky. Cade, why is Kentucky a 1 seed, or should there be somebody else, in your opinion, on that 1 seed line?
The biggest thing to me and a reason that Kentucky is a 1 seed is because of a single-digit net. That really helps them out. Just looking at the trends over the past couple of years, most of the 1 and 2 seed lines have been single-digit nets, so that is really going for them. And then the fact that they have 5 wins in Quad 1 with no losses outside of Quad 1 is really strong for them, as well as 5 wins on the road too.
Luke, Kentucky, number 1, or is there someone else that you might advocate for putting up on the 1 seed line?
Yeah, well, the only question is either Arizona or them for that last 1 seed. And I was just looking at it, and I think the reason we have Kentucky over Arizona is because we're looking at the value of those. They both have 5 Quad 1 wins, but we're looking at the value of those and who they beat. Kentucky's beat, I think it's Bama, Tennessee, and who else was that?
Kansas, and 2 of those were on the road.
Yes, Kansas too, at Kansas. They actually blew them out. And Arizona's best win is 1 win over UCLA at home. So I think the reason for us having, and I like it, having Kentucky as the final 1 is the value of those 1 seed, or those Quad 1 wins.
Yeah, and those teams are interchangeable right now. They need to keep winning, but it's going to be tight. At one point, we thought Purdue might have been a 2 seed this week because everything was so tight, it might get down to the strength of schedule or their defensive efficiency. So on our 2 seed line, the big question for us this morning is Wisconsin has 8 Quad 1 wins and is our last number 2. But as Cade said, traditionally the top 2 seed lines go to single-digit RPI net teams. That's a trend. If that trend continues, then does a 19 metric team get into that last seed line, or is that who fits that mode? And so, Luke, we'll come back to you. Your thoughts on Wisconsin's resume and their position on the 2 seed line?
Yeah, well, just looking at it, Wisconsin's got as good of a resume as about anybody does. Their strength of schedule is 5th, which is really good. They've got 6 road wins, and they're 8-4 in quad one, and 8 quad one wins is the most of anybody in the entire bracket. They're tied with Baylor for the most quad one wins. And all 4 of their losses have came within quad one. So you can't really ask for much of a better resume than what Wisconsin has.
Yeah, I think they're deserving. If they're not on the 2 seed line, they're definitely at the 3 seed line. Cade, your thoughts on Wisconsin?
I think Luke said it well. I mean, everything that Luke said was perfect. The only thing that really stands out to me is the fact that they got no losses outside of any other quads except for quad one, and I think that kind of goes along with every other team in the top 2 seed lines except for Baylor, Kansas, and Purdue, with only 1 quad 2 loss. But I think just comparing Wisconsin to the other teams we have on the 1 and 2 seed lines, we obviously had to put them there because they're very similar with every other team and not having those losses outside of quad 1.
So if we followed the trend, it's either Houston or Villanova would replace Wisconsin, and we just don't see those resumes as being better than Wisconsin's resume. Duke is sitting at 12 net. That was net as of Wednesday, not today's updated net. I didn't have a chance to update that net numbers. The records we have are updated, but the nets might have changed due to last night's performances. So I don't feel comfortable putting Villanova there. But let's our 3 seed line solid: Duke, Villanova, Texas Tech, UCLA. I think Duke and Villanova possibly can move up depending on weekly results. And then our 4 seed lines, we have a couple questions that happened today. One is Houston, the number 2 net team. I don't know where they ended up after last night. Let's see. Houston dropped to 3. So there are the number 3 in the net after the loss yesterday to SMU. Luke, you had a really good comment about Houston on the 4 seed line. Share with our listeners.
Yeah, I was saying you and me both think if we were the committee that we would have them down as a 4 seed with only 1 quad 1 win and not playing a tough schedule at all. That's what we would like to do. But really, it's not our decision. So we got to try and think in the minds of the committee members and what they would do. And I think potentially they would raise Houston up to 3 and drop a team like UCLA down because of the net and because UCLA is maybe quad 3 loss. And Houston, I mean, they don't play the tough of a schedule. And like I've said,
yeah, I think we lost Luke there for a second. But the other thing with Houston, the committee might think about, Kate, is they have a couple injuries. They've lost some of their top scorers, and they've been playing well without them, but then they take this loss here recently, and that could drop them a seed line also because of their injuries. So again, do you agree Houston on the 4 seed line, or would you have them moved up?
I agree that they should be on the 4 seed line. I don't think we should really reward a team for having a 2 net with only 1 quad 1 win. I mean, obviously that shows that they're playing good basketball, but the fact that you can only beat 1 team in quad 1 just kind of shows to me that you might not really have what it takes to get a win come tournament time. But I guess props to Houston for being able to keep that net and not losing the games that they should win. So I think they're deserving of themselves being on the 4 seed line, and I don't think they should really be any higher, kind of like Luke said.
And then we go to our last 4 seed right now. Providence is having a great year, 20-2, and they are 5-1 in both quad 1 and quad 2. And Providence is sitting right now at number 25 in the net. So that net, the mathematical stuff, Cade, is an issue for Providence. But if we have a couple teams, Texas has got 9 wins in quad 1 and 2. Marquette has 7 wins in quad 1, 9 in 1 and 2. So I think there's some teams there that possibly can move into the 4 seed line. What do you think about Providence, Texas, Marquette, Cade?
I think Providence is kind of like a Wisconsin in the fact that their net isn't really what you would typically see in the 4 seed line. seeing that normally you might have a team that is in like the teens of the net. But I think props to them for being able to get all these quality wins in quad 1 and 2 that they need to be deserving of the position that they're in, especially with having a 115 strength of schedule. So it's not necessarily the greatest, but the fact that they've been able to take advantage of the big games and move up to where they're at is really good to see for Providence.
Luke, that last 4 seed line, there's 3 teams we could probably put in there. Who do you like? Do you like Providence, or do you see a Texas or Marquette moving in there?
Can you hear me, by the way?
You're fine.
Okay,
Yep.
Sweet. Yeah, I would definitely stick with Providence. And it's this is what confuses me, and we've talked about this so many times, about the net, how Providence only has 2 losses, which is the least amount of anybody in the entire bracket, yet their net's down at 25. You'd think with a record like that, your net wouldn't be there. But I guess they must be playing quite a bit of close games is the only thing that I can really think of to justify that. But I would still stick with them because, just like I said, they only have 2 losses overall. And if you look at the strength of schedule, you would think that they would be playing some teams that aren't as good, kind of patting their stats, but they're not. They're playing a tough schedule, and they're still winning these games. And like you said, they have 10 wins in quad 1 and 2, and they've only lost 2 games overall. So I don't think you can move them, even though their net's so high.
Yeah, I think so. And the net can be gamed a little bit in directions. When we talked this morning, we looked at Ken Palm's luck factor, and Providence was the number 1 most luckiest team, depending on his metrics there. And so that probably explains why the net is 25 at 20 and 2. So those are our top 4 seed reveals. If you want to see the rest, go to www.delphibracketology.com. Check us out on Twitter. Watch our TV show on Tuesday nights. ISC Sports Network comes out on social media, or you just can subscribe to their subscription and get our show on demand. Or check us out here on our audio podcast, also on iTunes and Spotify. Now what we're going to do is we're going to dive into some resumes and get the opinions of what we like and don't like. And Daniel has joined us live and put a question in the chat, so we're going to answer Daniel's question right away. So guys, try to find St. Louis on our bracket, and we'll take a deep dive into what we like and what we think St. Louis needs to do. For us right now, St. Louis is the 5th team out of our bracket, so they're extremely close. The metrics for our listeners: the 49 net for St. Louis, 16-6 overall, 4-3 on the roads. That's a positive. 1-3 in quad 1, 3-2 in quad 2, with 1 quad 3 loss. As you take a look at those numbers, Luke, what can we tell Daniel about St. Louis?
Yeah, they're definitely in consideration for sure. And they don't really have 2 terrible losses. Their net is in a spot where they could definitely make the tournament, but they're kind of just hanging out with the rest of the teams around them right now. I think they need, I don't know if they're scheduled the rest of the season, but I think they need another big win to maybe solidify themselves to get a chance to climb up in the tournament. But right now, I think they're just a couple wins away.
St. Louis is one of those teams to watch because the committee always likes to slide teams in with a mid 40 to 60 net that is around 500 in quad 2. So, Daniel, I'd say root for the Billikens to get to 500 in quad 1 and quad 2. As I looked at your schedule, the Davidson game on the road is the only quad 1 game remaining at this time for that opportunity. Richmond is a quad 2. VCU at home is a quad 2. So those are the 3 games that I would say. You mentioned in your in the chat there that will 6-2 do it for them if it's the right games. You could lose to, if you beat Davidson, Richmond, and VCU, you're going to have some good wins. But if you lose to LaSalle, St. Joseph's, those become bad losses, and that's going to hurt too. So it's hard to say 6-2 will do it. But I think there's enough chance to get wins. If they go 6-2 or 22, I think they're close. And I think that's a team that'll take a North Carolina out, possibly, that goes 0-10 or something in quad 1. I do think there is there are some opportunities there for St. Louis. We mentioned the Dayton-St. Louis game was huge because we thought both Dayton and St. Louis were on that borderline of where the committee likes to look at teams, especially in that first four opportunity. So, Daniel, have them win games. Keep winning games. St. Bonaventure is better than a 101 net. They were favored early. I think the committee looks at that. The other thing that I will say is you've lost to Auburn. You've lost to Belmont. UAB is a team considered for the tournament. And you lost to Memphis, who at the time in November 16th was thought to be one of the best teams in the country. I think the number of losses aren't good for St. Louis, but the committee does look that there were some serious losses, and the only bad loss was at UMass. And I'm saying all that with I'm not sure what your roster was too. So if there was a COVID pause, if there was an injury or something like that, that could also help St. Louis. Definitely think St. Louis is if they're in the top 8 of our teams out, St. Louis has a chance to go on. Daniel, we thank you for your question. We hope you continue to join us. Contact us on Twitter. We can continuously update you on St. Louis. Cade, let's go to you. Pick a team you want to talk about, and then Luke and I will tell you if we agree or disagree with where you think those teams should be resume-wise.
I want to talk about Villanova, and I know we touched on them a little bit earlier in the show, but just to kind of take a little deeper look at them, right now they're sitting on the 3 seed line with a 6 net and 5 quad 1 wins, like we said. But they've got wins over Tennessee, Xavier, Seton Hall, Connecticut, and then Xavier again. And I just want to hear you guys' thoughts on whether that 6 net and their quality strength of schedule really keeps them where they're at right now, or maybe if they get another win to be over 500 in quad 1, how far that might push them up over a team like Wisconsin with that single-digit net that the trends say should be in the 1 and 2 seed lines.
Luke, I'll let you take that one first.
I think they definitely have the resume to potentially be a 2, but the problem is right now I don't know who you would move them up for. I think I like them as a 3 where we have them right now, but I think they're above Duke on the 3 line, and I think they would be our next team to move up to a 2 if a team in our current 2 seed lines drops a game, because I think Villanova is good enough to be there, but I just don't think they're quite as good as the 2s that we have right now.
I'm gonna agree. I think they're fine. The reason you would move them up is the net at number 6, and then the fact that their schedule strength is 7 non-conference, 13th overall strength of schedule has to be. I'm a big proponent of rewarding teams for playing good schedules. I'd rather a team be, 18-6 playing tough teams than 20-2 or something and not playing a tough schedule. So I'm probably a little overboard with strength of schedule. The other thing I think Villanova has going for them, Cade, is that their worst loss is on the road to the 76 net. Every one of their losses is to top 25. Marquette's 24. They've lost twice. UCLA's 14, Baylor's 7, and Purdue 4. They've lost to those games, those teams. Man, I do like Villanova overall, just watching them, but I do think they're perfect at the 3 seed right now. I wouldn't be surprised when the committee reveals in 10 days that we see them at the 2 seed line, because that's a heck of a schedule. All right, Luke, what's the deep dive you want to take a look at?
First off, I would say I think you could definitely potentially move Villanova over Duke though in the 3 line, just to give our eyeballs a little bit better.
Correct. I will do that after the show. I will move Villanova up to the top 3 seed line.
Perfect.
Our buddy Gleason won't like that, so it's a good thing he's not watching right now. He would be a little bothered by it. So, what team do you want to take a deep dive look at? Luke?
I'll look at Iowa, because right now they're in the tournament, pretty solidly in the tournament. But if you look deeper at them, they've only got one win in quad 1, and that was against Utah State. And their next best win is IU at home. So really, they're playing in the Big Ten. You would think they'd have some good wins, and they would be playing some teams that are real good, which they are playing teams that are real good. But they haven't won really that many great games. They've only got one quad 1 win, and then their next best win is IU. So and their nets is real strong to be in the tournament. But I think they're a team that if they lose some games and kind of go in a bad spell here, you could watch them tumble down pretty fast because they don't really have as good of a wins as you think they would have for playing in the Big Ten.
I'll take this real quick, and then we'll have Cade jump in. Yeah, their resume is kind of weak. 254 non-conference schedule. They beat up on a lot of teams that weren't very good. That's why their net is at 20. That's the reverse of Wisconsin and Providence, in my opinion. But 4-7 in quads 1 and 2, that's not very good. I think both Iowa and Indiana are in jeopardy of a losing streak of moving down. In fact, we might have Iowa a little bit too high. Cade, your thoughts on Iowa?
I like them where they're at right now. I think the biggest thing that might hurt them is their non-conference strength of schedule being at 253. So they're not really going to get any games outside of the Big Ten that are necessarily going to help them. And I think that might weigh them down because it'll just wind up to be like stat padding games where they can keep their net where it's at to keep them in, but it's not really going to give the committee those nice quality wins that you like to see from a Big Ten team that's going into the tournament.
Yeah, I'd be worried if I was Iowa fan right now. You got to find some solid wins. I think they're playing tonight as well. So the team I'd like to look at next is Arkansas, 31 net, 19-5, just upset number 1 Auburn. They are 2-3 in quad 1, and 6-0 in quad 2 with 2 quad 3 losses, 3-2 on the road. Cade, we'll come to you. What do you think of Arkansas? We've been moving them up here the last couple of weeks, and especially after Auburn, I think they're now at a 6 seed line for us. Is that good or is it too high?
I think it's good. I think anytime that you can upset a number 1 team in the country, it's definitely going to, give you that quality win and boost your rankings a little bit. But I think the biggest thing that Arkansas needs to worry about is their non-conference strength of schedule, and it's kind of the same deal that Iowa was going through, that they might not get the games that, like Auburn, that are going to really push them up. So they have to make sure they keep winning in quads 3 and 4 with 2 quad 3 losses right now. That's not necessarily a terrible thing when you're able to beat a team like Auburn, but it definitely isn't it's not comforting for Arkansas to have those 2 losses under their belt. I mean, maybe they might use this fuel to beat the bigger teams, but yeah, I definitely think that they need to make sure that they just win the games that they're supposed to stay where they're at.
The 6-7 seed line's interesting. Teams are moving back and forth. Luke, your take on Arkansas?
Yeah, that was my bad. My phone's dying because my computer wasn't working, so I had to get a charger. But I think they're on a tear right now, and they are moving in the right direction. I don't know how early those 2 quad 3 losses were to Vanderbilt and
Hofstra.
Yeah. But I think they were fairly early in the season, and they are just really rolling right now. And they beat LSU on the road too. That was their other quad 1 win. So they are definitely moving in the right direction. And with the teams around them, because we were talking about this earlier too, some of these higher seeds are not as strong as years in the past. So I think they're sitting pretty well for where they're at right now.
Yeah, you have some teams that have lost. Ohio State lost to Rutgers. UConn had a nice win. Arkansas is there. Xavier lost to Seton Hall. You had St. Mary's with the loss this week. These are all teams on the 6-7 seed line. So that does go. So we got 3 more teams to look at before we call it a night. Cade, what's your second team that you want to look at?
My second team might be an odd one that we don't really look at too much, but I got Murray State. Right now they're on the 10 seed line with an overall record of 19-2. And I think that was really the biggest thing that stood out to me, that they only got 2 losses, but they're this low on the seed line with a 27 net. So their strength schedule is fairly weak, but seeing that they're in the Ohio Valley Conference, that might be like a common factor for them. But they're 7-1 on the road with 2 quad 1 wins, beating Belmont and Memphis and losing to a really solid Auburn team. So I just kind of wanted to compare them to a team like Iowa on the 8 seed line with a 21 net and only 1 quad 1 win in just the fact that I think Murray State might be able to move up because that net and just the fact that they don't really have any losses. It was kind of surprising to me to see. I guess the question is like, why? What's the biggest factor that Iowa being at a 21 net is much higher than Murray State with only a 27 net? So
that's a good question. I'm not sure I can answer it. Usually, well, you try to pinpoint. Murray is the automatic qualifier in our bracket right now for the Ohio Valley Conference. They're leading the conference, and what we do is we put the leaders of the conference in automatic, and then we try to pick the 36 at-large teams. But you still have to seed a team, and Murray State's having a great year. In fact, I think if they lose in their conference tournament, they're likely to be an at-large bid, and that's called a bid thief, and someone steals a bid. If Belmont beats them in the championship game, another quality program, then Belmont gets in, and the committee's likely to put Murray State in because they're 19-2, and one of their losses is to the top seed Auburn. The tough thing is, the schedule of Ohio Valley's not as tough as the Big Ten, but boy, when Luke talked about Iowa and Iowa's top win. I'm not sure that – I think we have Iowa after this discussion too low. I think they're a 9 or a 10, to be honest. We might have to look at that after the show. But Murray State's going to be an interesting one. Where does the committee put these smaller schools? Typically, it's either going to be the 8, 9, 10 or the 11 seed line if they're really quality teams. And so we kind of split the difference real quick today. Luke, your thoughts on a mid-major automatic qualifier like Murray State?
Yeah, well, I think looking into them here that they could definitely move up pretty easy. Because you just look at them initially and you think, well, they're not playing nobody and they have 11 quad 4 wins. But like Kate said, well, they have more quad 1 wins than Iowa, who's in the Big Ten. So, I mean, you can say all you want to who they're playing, but they've got more quad 1 wins than Iowa and also USC. So I think after this show, we might want to look into that a little deeper.
I do think that we also have Loyola in the same situation, and they got beat, I think, the other night. We got Wyoming in the Mountain West. So in this 8, 9, and 10 seed line, you add Boise State into that mix. There's some small schools that are on those 8, 9, 10 seed lines, but what's the right order? Luke, your last team, your deep dive resume that you want to look at.
Yeah, I'll go with North Carolina. We've kind of already talked on this a little bit, but they currently do not have a quad 1 win, which is the only team in our whole bracket who doesn't have a quad 1 win. They're 0-7, and we were looking at this morning that they don't really have. I think they have 1 or 2 more opportunities to win a quad 1 game, but it's going to get really confusing if they don't pull one of those out and they end up with 0 wins in quad 1. What do you really do with them? Their net's good enough to be in. They haven't lost a game in another quadrant. So that's going to be really tough to figure out what to do if they drop their next chances of a quad 1 win and end up with 0.
The only 2 reasons I have them in when I update the spreadsheet almost every day and then resort them 1 through 68. So it's a start fresh every day. So you eliminate bias of where teams were and you do a better job of comparing teams one direction or the other. Is the 0 losses outside quadrant 1 and the 41 net is a net that is acceptable. But boy, they have not beaten a tournament team. Even the teams in the non-conference that they played, there is not one team that is in our bracket that North Carolina. And so we'll go back to Daniel's question earlier. Does a SMU, does a St. Louis, do some of those mid-majors that are hanging out in the high 40s, low 50s deserve to be in rather than North Carolina? Because, North Carolina gets a lot of opportunities, but they haven't won any of them. So if they get one here, is one good enough to keep a team like St. Louis, who might beat some good teams in their conference, but those are 2 and quad 2 and quad 3 wins. Cade, quick thoughts on North Carolina.
I think that they're definitely a team that could possibly drop out of the tournament. I think we might have had them out of the tournament at one point, but the biggest thing for me is that they have 5 road wins. They're positive. They got a positive record on the road. So I think that definitely looks good on their resume. But the fact that all those wins are against teams that aren't in quad one, I think is shaky to see, because I don't really want to reward a team that might be a big name team but only gets one quad one win. I think it might be this is the inner Mr. Painter in me coming out, but I think it might be cool to see a mid-major team like St. Louis go up to where they're at right now to be able to get a chance in the tournament instead of keeping all these big teams in when, they're not beating anyone.
Always a debate. And let's go to another ACC, because there's really 4 ACC teams on the 10, 11, and 12 seed lines. Notre Dame's an automatic qualifier because they're leading the conference. You got Miami, you got Wake Forest, and you got North Carolina. All of those could potentially fall out, and it could be Duke only from one of the greatest traditional conferences in college basketball. It's a crazy year. But I want to take a look at Wake Forest as our last deep dive. I've been a big fan of Jake LaRavia, transfer from Indiana State, played at Lawrence Central here in Indiana. We're big fans of Jake LaRavia, fantastic young ball player down there for the Demon Deacons. They're 20-5, an excellent record. They have 1 win in quad 1, and they are 4-2 in quad 3, or 5-2. So they're 6-5 overall in quad 1 and 2, but they do not have a win over a tournament team. So there's no win over a tournament team there for North Carolina, Wake Forest. Obviously, if North Carolina is in, then Wake Forest has that win over them, and vice versa if that plays out. But what do you guys think, Cade, about Wake Forest?
I'm going to kind of side with the committee and all their different metric systems and everything like that, and the trends they set. That you've kind of talked about how if you got a positive record between quads 1 and 2, that you're most likely going to be in, especially with a net of 38. That's definitely good to see for Wake Forest and holding them in. But the negative that Wake Forest has is their non-conference strength of schedule being 329. That's obviously not really where it needs to be, and it kind of proves that they haven't really played some big teams, but they have been able to get a quad 1 win, unlike a North Carolina. So I like to see where they're at on the seed lines right now, seeing that, they are able to prove themselves having that positive record in quad 1 and 2, and I like where they're at.
Another trend that we've seen since 2016 is when you have a non-conference strength of schedule over 300, you're generally not making the tournament. I think we counted 5 or 6 teams in all of those years who had a strength of schedule over 300, and there's a couple in there. Indiana is one of them. Wake Forest is another one that when it comes down to the last few teams in, if you played a tougher schedule and had just a little bit less resume, that committee has put that team with the less resume in because they've scheduled stronger, and teams control their strength of schedule because they set their schedules. Wake Forest, Luke, what do you see on their team sheet?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're the strongest team on here by any means, but I think they're for sure in where we stand right now. I think they're definitely not moving up, but I think they could potentially move down one, but for sure they're going to stay in. Their quad 1 win was over Virginia Tech on the road, which they are not in our are they?
No. They were at one point. They lost quite a few. Now they've won 4 more in a row. You got teams in the ACC like Virginia and Virginia Tech who are on some hot streaks, so those quad wins might flip just because those teams move up in the net.
But like Cade was saying, they are positive in quads 1 and 2 combined, unlike North Carolina. And they if you try and get over the quad 1 wins and go to quad 2, they also have more wins than North Carolina in quad 2. So they're definitely above North Carolina, who is a fellow ACC member. So I think they're for sure in right now, and the ACC is a conference to watch how some of these teams shake out.
All right, so it's time to wrap the show up, and we have our game winner, a question at the end. And the question for both of you is, what stat means the most for you as a bracketologist, and why? Maybe an example. Cade, we'll start with you.
I think the easy answer for everyone might be how many quad 1 wins a team has, and just proving that a team can, beat the strong teams and solidify themselves as quality teams. But some things that might go under the radar to most bracketologists is the number of road wins that teams can get compared to the number of losses that they have. So I found a team like Boise State who has an overall record of 17-5 with 3 quad 2 losses. and a quad 4 loss, but they're 6-2 on the road. And I know in college basketball, especially with the rowdy college students that are in those student sections, it's tough to play on the road when it can get that loud, especially Mackey Arena. That's the craziest place to be in when it's packed, and that, like, being able to get a road win really shouldn't go unnoticed in college basketball.
Well done, Luke. What stat means a lot to you?
Hold on, I want to say something on Cade's first off. Me and you were in Mackey Arena against Illinois the other night, and yeah, that was definitely something special. And Wisconsin was able to get it done at Mackey Arena, so that's another thing to help them out even more. The only team to do it all year, so definitely road wins are pretty important, and especially at some of these crazy venues that some teams have. But my stat that I'll go with is strength of schedule. Like you were saying earlier, I like to reward the teams that challenge themselves and not necessarily just try and pat their resume to get a certain amount of wins. And what this helps is it allows you to lose some games and still be okay, because you're having a lot of opportunities and you have a lot of chances to win big games and have a ton of upside out of this. So it gives you some leeway. And a perfect example of this is Alabama. They have quite a few losses. Let me find here. Yeah, so they have 9 losses overall, which you'd be looking at and think it might be a little bit shaky. But they have the best strength of schedule, and you look at who they've beat. They've beaten Baylor, Gonzaga, and some more really good teams. So, I mean, you can lose some games if you're playing the best schedule and you pick up some big wins, because you're going to have a ton of opportunities.
At least you'll be in for selection, and the losses may hurt your seeding, but you get in, you have a chance to win 6 in a row and cut down that. Mine is always combining quad 1 and 2 and getting over 500. We answered Daniel's question earlier about St. Louis. One of the keys is get some quad 1 and 2 wins and get over that 500. I think that excuses some of those losses that might be in quad 3 and quad 4. I also like what Cade said about road wins might offset. So, if you're 6-2 on the road and you have a quad 3 or a quad 4 loss, I think that might balance out in some of those negatives for that. So that'll do it for this episode of Bracket U. We'll be back next week. And until then, make sure you go to our website, DelphiBracketology.com. Follow us on Twitter at Delphi Brackets. Check for updates and information. Always tweet at us. We'll be glad to try to get back to you as quick as possible. Also, we encourage you to check out our donation page where you can help us with all costs associated with the club podcast, feeding these guys when we have meetings and everything. And we always hope that your team wins the big one. So for Luke Smock, Cade Nelson, I'm Coach Tonsoni. Happy basketball watching.